The Pleiadians' shocking truth, humanity's final preparation at 3 a.m., it's darker than you think. In the dead of night, shadows stretched long across the ground like dark fingers reaching for something unseen. The air was thick with tension, almost electric. Every clock, beeping softly in the stillness, seemed to tick down toward an impending doom. At precisely 3 a.m., an eerie hush fell, punctuated only by a distant howl of the wind. That's when the lights flickered, first a warning, then total darkness. And if the stillness was unsettling, the whispers that followed were downright chilling. In that moment, all across town, people stirred, eyes darting to their windows. They sensed it, the undeniable rush of something ancient lurking just outside their perception. Unusual lights danced in the sky, twisting in improbable shapes. Not stars, not planes. Something else, something that felt alive. Staring up, their hearts thudded in their chests, hitching breaths as they wondered what their simple lives had stumbled into. For weeks, they had felt it building, strange symbols in the clouds, animals behaving oddly, and an unsettling urge to prepare for what? They weren't the only ones who felt it. Across the city, every neighborhood buzzed with the same uneasiness. Supermarket shelves emptied, people stockpiling supplies as if waiting for a storm. Friday night hangouts spiraled into whispered discussions about the Pleiadians, those mystical beings from beyond. People laughed nervously, their voices tinged with a hint of fear as they exchanged stories about the signs. Some claimed to have dreamt of them, others swore they felt their presence brushing against the edges of reality. It was nuts and yet, terrifyingly real. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the clock struck 3, a wave of panic surged through the air. A local news crew scrambled to cover the strange phenomena, their headlights illuminating frightened faces as they captured the confusion. Murmurs filled the streets, something's coming. Eyes widened. Hearts raced. The flashing lights hovered closer, pulsating in ominous patterns, revealing faces mesmerized and terrified by the otherworldly spectacle. Just when the crowd thought it couldn't get any stranger, a sudden scream cut through the silence, sending shivers down spines. All heads turned towards an alley where a figure stood cloaked in shadows, eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. What did this mean? What was the truth behind the Pleiadians? And as panic spread, could humanity truly be preparing for something more profound than they realized? The alley's dark figure stepped forward, and a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. It wasn't just a shadow, it was a person. Or something resembling one. The glow from its eyes pierced the darkness, casting an unsettling light as it approached, moving with an unnerving grace. Was it friend or foe? Stay back. Someone shouted, voice breaking, panic slicing through the air thicker than the shadows. A few people took a hesitant step back, others moved forward, drawn to the hypnotic glow emanating from the figure. What was it doing in the alley? Eyes darted nervously, exchanging glances filled with dread. I come in peace, the voice resonated, smooth yet chilling, echoing in the stillness. It felt otherworldly, as if it originated from somewhere beyond understanding. Fear rippled through the crowd. As one person stepped forward, the bright lights in the sky shifted, circling like vultures above the gathering of anxious spectators. Was this the sign they had anticipated? Who are you? A man, braver than most, advanced a bit closer, but his voice trembled. I am of the Pleiades, the figure replied, every word lingering in the air, heavy with meaning. We have come for you, for all of humanity. Your time to awaken has arrived. Awaken? The word sent shivers down many spines. People exchanged uneasy looks. There was an urgency in the figure's tone, a commanding presence that seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as the strange lights overhead. As whispers intensified, the figure raised a hand, bathed in an eerily glowing aura. Just then, the sky above erupted in blinding light, as if the stars themselves had ignited. The crowd shielded their eyes in horror and awe, hearts racing as they squinted against the brilliance. Some called it a false dawn, while others began to cry. "This can't be real." A woman whispered, clutching her child, anxiety pouring from her every pore. But deep down, they all felt it, the electricity in the air, the unseen pull towards this cosmic convergence. What were they being called to? And why now? Dreams flooded many minds, dreams of a cosmic war, of unity, destruction, and rebirth. The fabric of reality felt thin, the world teetering on the edge of something monumental. From the shadows, the cloaked figure's expression remained inscrutable, but a flicker of emotion crossed its glowing eyes. "Fear not, for we hold the key to your survival if you choose to embrace it." A murmur swept through the crowd again, this time a mixture of trepidation and intrigue. Could they trust this being? Were the Pleiadians messengers of hope or harbingers of doom? As uncertainty loomed, the supernatural glow pulsed stronger, and the ground beneath them vibrated lightly, signaling an environmental change, an omen that stirred something primal within. Suddenly, a pulse of energy knocked some people off their feet, sending them sprawling to the ground. The lights above darkened for an instant, returning with vivid colors that danced in chaotic patterns, almost speaking to the frightened crowd. And amid the swirling chaos, the realization hit: this was their moment to decide. Would they face the unknown together or fall apart, gripped by fear? Just then, as if sensing their hesitation, the figure's voice cut through the chaos: "The choice is yours, but time is fading." With those words hanging in the air, a deep rumble echoed, reverberating both in the ground and within their hearts. What would they choose? And would the Pleiadians really usher in a new chapter of humanity, or was this all a deceptive mirage, hiding something darker? The clock was ticking, the winds howled, and whatever was coming was breaking through the veil, tearing at the fabric of their reality. The energy thrummed through the crowd, a living pulse that echoed their growing anxiety. Bodies swayed, some still caught in the disturbing allure of the figure, while others stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief. For a brief moment, silence wrapped around them like a thick fog, heavy with uncertainty. "Wake up!" the cloaked figure yelled, as if sensing their hesitation. "Don't you feel the change? It's happening now." The crowd collectively recoiled as the air felt charged, vibrating with an urgency that was hard to ignore. Someone screamed. "What do you want from us?" A wave of panic swept through, voices rising in chaos, a torrent of questions and fears. "Humanity stands on the brink of destruction," the figure declared, raising its hands to calm them. "Choose to embrace the light. Embrace the awakening or be consumed by the darkness." Above, the skies churned like a restless ocean. The swirling colors dimmed but flickered with menacing intensity, casting ominous shadows across the faces of the crowd. "Choose." Someone croaked from the back. "What kind of choice is this? What are you even saying?" The confusion unraveled even further, taking root in hearts filled with dread. A girl, no older than 16, broke through the mass, eyes brimming with tears. "They're lying!" she shouted, voice trembling. "This can't be right. We can't just trust them." "No." A husky voice surged through the masses. "If they're from the Pleiades, maybe they can save us. The world is changing, we can see it." Debate ignited among them, a firestorm of hopeful cries clashing with anxious whispers. The figure let the chaos wash over it, maintaining composure, its luminescent gaze unwavering. "Your doubt is natural," it said, voice rising over the clamor. "But darkness has always thrived on fear and uncertainty. We offer you clarity, a path forward." Before anyone could respond, the ground shuddered violently. A thunderous crack echoed, splitting the damp pavement beneath them. Fear-plastered faces, and screams echoed. People fell, grasping onto one another, desperate to stay rooted. "Look!" a man shouted, pointing toward the cracking ground. Through the fissures, a sickly green light shimmered, undulating like living skin beneath the surface. "Enough!" the figure commanded, stepping forward, its appearance growing more defined. A hint of desperation flared in its eyes. "This isn't an enemy attack, this is the moment to make a choice. Your choice." Struggling to comprehend the enormity of what was unfolding, the crowd hummed with uncertainty. Decisions hung like fog, heavy and dense. Some clung to each other, hearts racing, while others stared at the alien light with a mix of fear and intrigue. "What if we don't choose?" someone whispered, barely audible in the chaos. A sudden hush fell. The figure's voice sliced through with promise and dread. "Then darkness will choose for you. And you won't survive it." The deep rumble beneath them echoed ominously, cutting through the air. A collective breath hitched, hearts pounding wild against their ribs, as they stood on the precipice of fate. Would they unite, or would division leave them vulnerable to forces beyond understanding? Just as resolve began to rise, the icy pulse of fear surged through the crowd again, suppressing hopeful murmurs. As the glowing figure reached out a beacon of possibility, a harbinger of doom, new colors ignited the sky, casting fleeting images of what awaited them if they failed to in that moment, everything teetered. With choices looming and shadows deepening, a voice rang out from the edges of the crowd, familiar, fierce. "We will not stand idle." The question lingered, hanging like smoke in the air: would humanity rally and confront this unknown threat, or would fear shatter them in the face of a cosmic truth long kept hidden? As tensions reached a breaking point, the ground trembled again, ushering forth an unknown force poised to unleash an even greater turmoil what lay just beneath the surface, waiting for the final call. The ground shook again, more violently this time, sending waves of panic crashing through the crowd like a tidal wave. People stumbled, many falling to their knees, eyes wide with terror as the sickly green light continued to pulse and dance, beckoning them closer. That light had a life of its own, twisting and turning, wrapping around their thoughts like a vine entangling a helpless creature. "Help!" A woman's cry pierced the chaos. She clutched a small boy, who was crying, his face smeared with dirt and tears. "What do we do? What do we do?" Her voice trembled, reflecting the fear that gripped every corner of the crowd. The cloaked figure stepped forward, moving with an urgency that contrasted with its earlier calm. "Trust me," it shouted, the sound reverberating against the walls of fear surrounding them. "Trust the path to the light. I will guide you." But trust was a fragile thing. The doubt spread like a contagion. "You think you can just tell us what to do?" shouted a man with wild eyes, shaking his head in disbelief. "Who even are you?" "Enough!" the figure roared, and the intensity of its voice seemed to momentarily still the ground. "I am your way out, your way forward. Yet the choice remains yours." Some stepped back, others moved closer. The air was thick with uncertainty, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. A rift had opened within the masses, individuals torn between faith and skepticism. Then came another rumble, more profound than the last. The pavement splintered wide, and a sickly green glow poured forth, transforming the world around them. The colors above intensified, shooting brilliant hues across the sky, igniting fears of what lay beyond the light. The girl from before, her tears now glistening with a strange resolve, found her voice again. "This isn't real. It's all a trick," she shouted to anyone who would listen, her fierceness rallying those tethered by doubt. "We can't just surrender our lives to something we know nothing about." A ripple of agreement surged through the crowd. People began nodding, whispering doubts, a wave of dissent sparking until the figure snapped its gaze towards them, its expression etched with a combination of urgency and desperation. "If you turn away from this moment, you will face the consequences not just for yourselves, but for everyone you love." The intensity of its words hung heavy in the air, electrifying and raw. Just then, another figure emerged from the darkness at the edge of the crowd, a silhouette against the pulsing chaos. "They're right. This new voice rang out, firm and authoritative. The awakening is upon us, but not in the way you think. You are not simply facing a choice of light and dark. There are deeper layers to this that you can't even begin to imagine. Gasps filled the space, as the new figure stepped into the flickering light, revealing a face they recognized. It belonged to someone they thought lost, a respected leader who had vanished, swallowed by the very darkness that now threatened them all. "Mark!" someone shouted, voice quaking with disbelief. Eyes were wide, mouths agape for hope flickered like a fragile flame in their hearts. "We don't have much time." Mark's urgency cut through their shock. "The Pleiadians aren't here just to lead us, they are here to save their own, and we are collateral. There are secrets they haven't told you, secrets that could change everything." The ground shook yet again, but this time with an undercurrent of fear that sent chills racing down spines. The words hung in the air, an invitation to a reality more horrific than they had ever imagined. Was this a revelation or a trap? As the crowd oscillated between hope and dread, the sky exploded with a blinding burst of light, sending everyone stumbling back. "What will you choose?" the cloaked figure intoned, its voice barely audible over the increasing cacophony. Time is running out, and with that revelation, the question morphed and deepened, entangled in shadows that threatened to consume them all. Would they face an unseen enemy or fracture further, leaving themselves exposed in a war they couldn't comprehend? The blinding light twisted into an otherworldly spectacle, swallowing everything in its path. Shadows stretched unnaturally, creeping up the walls like a suffocating fog. People shielded their eyes, their breath hitching in their throats, hearts pounding in sync like a war drum. Whispered fears filled the air, clinging to the edges of terrified breaths. "Mark!" the woman with the boy shouted again, her voice trembling but resolute. "You disappeared. What do you know?" Mark barely met her gaze. The desperation in his eyes spoke louder than words. "I've seen things, there's a darkness that manipulates the light." He stepped closer to the pulsing glow, as if compelled by an unseen force. "It wants to fracture us. We can't let it." The cloaked figure thrust a hand skyward, silencing the tumultuous crowd momentarily. "The choice is greater than you realize. Do you embrace this light, or do you fight against the inevitable?" The crowd shifted uneasily. An elderly man, frail yet determined, took a stand. "What you're offering could be worse. We need to fight what we don't understand, not surrender to it." Mark stepped up beside him. "No. The Pleiadians have technology beyond our comprehension. They're not simply our guides, they might manipulate us into being their pawns. If we don't act now, we're finished." Gasps of disbelief filled the air, cutting through the terror like knives. The cloaked figure's anger flared, echoing across the crowd. "You think they care about you? They only seek to harvest what remains. You could become their slaves." "What do you mean?" the girl interjected, her voice fierce yet vulnerable. With that, Mark turned to the crowd, his face lined with urgency. "The Pleiadians thrive on fear. They feed off our desperation. This light is a facade, a promise that hides their true intentions. Look." He pointed at the ground, fissures snaking outward, revealing a dark, swirling abyss beneath them. The crowd gasped, taking several steps back, their minds racing. What if this so-called awakening is their trap? Someone whispered, and the murmurs grew, infecting the group with doubt. A strange silence settled over them as the ground roared louder, an earthquake in a shuddering crescendo. The sickly green light seemed to align with the pulse of the earth, each tremor breaking a little more of their resolve. Fear and uncertainty twisted in their guts, rendering them immobile. "Let us go," the woman cried, clenching her son tighter. "We have to leave. Run." But just as her voice reached a fevered pitch, the cloaked figure stepped between her and the likely escape route, its expression shifting from anger to sorrow. "Once you step away from the light, there might be no return. Who knows what darkness looms beyond?" Heartbeats echoed like distant thunder, a universal pulse of anxiety reverberating through the crowd. Finally, a brave soul from the back shouted, "What's worse than living as shadows? What's worse than being pawned by cosmic beings? Let us take our chances in the unknown." Whispers of agreement rippled through the masses, emboldening their spirits. Yet the cloaked figure's presence loomed like a blanket of dread. "What's it going to be, people?" It thundered, desperation pooling in its voice. "Stop hesitating. Your fate is hanging in the balance." And suddenly, the air thickened with tension, a palpable energy crackling between hope and despair. Choices loomed large and terrifying. A window into an uncharted future was opening, one that could drown them all if they faltered. As the crowd swirled in chaos, the blinding light flickered, a heartbeat beneath the surface of reality. It pulsed with a rhythm that echoed the thumping in their chests. In that moment, what lay within the light became just as fearsome as the darkness it promised to extinguish. With one final tremor, the ground gave a deafening roar, halting all thought. The world seemed to hold its breath. "Will you dance with the light or dive into the darkness?" The cloaked figure cried, its voice an aching wail against the backdrop of fear. "The choice is yours, but only for a heartbeat." Longer, and in that breath, the air felt electric, as if the answer was waiting, lurking just beneath the surface, ready to erupt. What secrets would unfold in the next moment? The chaos erupted into a whirlwind of anxiety, arms flailing as people stumbled backward, grappling for balance. Their faces were masks of confusion, fear swirling like a tempest. Mark felt every heartbeat pulse through him, a deep resonance that bellowed in the pit of his stomach. "Step away from the light," he shouted, raising his arms, trying to rally the fraying crowd. "Don't let it draw you in. It's an illusion." But as he spoke, the cloaked figure stepped closer to him, its presence somehow both comforting and menacing. "You think you're protecting them, but it is already too late. The darkness is inside each one of them. Leaving the light will turn that darkness into something unimaginable." The crowd gasped, the murmurings rising and spinning, like a coiled serpent ready to strike. Faces turned to each other, searching for reassurance, yet finding none. They stood on a precipice, eyes wide, breaths shallow. Suddenly, a thunderous crash echoed from below. The ground buckled, sending a surge of terror through the masses. People screamed, a chorus of pure fear erupting into the air. The pulsing light dimmed momentarily, as fissures widened, releasing an acrid scent that filled their nostrils. Mark scanned the crowd, spotting the woman and her child, fear etched on her face. "Stay close," he yelled, darting toward them. The cloaked figure's laughter shattered the tension, a sound so deep yet disembodied that it rattled their bones. "You think you can save them, Mark? They're already marked for the harvest. The light has seeped into the very core of your beings, and it longs to reclaim what it lost." Mark pressed forward, his eyes burning with determination. "I refuse to believe that. You're manipulating us with fear, trying to control our every move." He reached the woman, his voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Listen. We need to move. We need to find the truth, wherever it lies." Before she could respond, the ground let out a bone-rattling tremor. A jagged piece of earth shot upward, splintering from the darkness, cutting the crowd in two. The separation sent terrified cries echoing through the air as the ground shook beneath their feet. There it was, a dark, swirling maw that hungrily absorbed the feeble light around it, screaming of dread and despair. It was a representation of everything Mark feared, illustrated before them in grotesque physicality. The crowd began to panic, inching back from the newly formed abyss, their eyes filled with horror. "Don't look away," Mark shouted, desperately trying to rally everyone. "This darkness feeds on our fear. The moment we surrender our hope, it will claim us." Cowardice flashed through some faces, but others held steady. The brave soul from before stepped forward again. "Mark is right. We can't succumb. We fight this together." Then, just as a spark ignited among them, a piercing scream cut through the chaos. A man had lost his footing, teetering perilously close to the infinite darkness. No! The elder man yelled, lunging forward but too late. The man vanished into the swirling void, his scream snuffed out in an instant, leaving a chill that spread through the group. The heart-stopping loss darkened the atmosphere even more. The cloaked figure, unfazed, watched the scene unfold with a blend of amusement and sadness. Did you not hear? They are already lost. Embrace the light, or darkness will consume you one by one. You have seconds before it's over. As moments stretched, the air crackled with tension, desperation clawing at Mark's throat. They had to decide. Now. He shouted, a wave of urgency flooding his voice. We choose. Together. The darkness can only hold power if we show fear. Keep your light alive. Eyes flickered with determination, a collective heartbeat rallying them. But just as they rallied beneath the cold glow of uncertainty, the cloaked figure stepped forward, hands extended. You choose now, but do you even know what you're inviting? The truth will tear you apart. Mark felt a chill creep over him as the world twisted and turned. Time hung like a pendulum, waiting for the decisive moment that would either break them or forge a unity profound enough to confront the darkness. Could they harness their inner light against the insidious shadow creeping ever closer? As shadows cast their long fingers, the final choice loomed close. Would they break the chains binding them, or would they be devoured in the turmoil? With one last tremor, the earth shifted and the light flickered ominously, revealing what lay hidden within. What awaited them in that fleeting space between shadow and luminescence? The truth, once unveiled, wouldn't just change their fates, it would unravel everything they thought they knew. Mark's pulse raced as the darkness lurched closer, its insatiable hunger palpable in the air. The trembling ground beneath their feet seemed to echo the collective fear coursing through every heart. He felt the weight of their gazes, searching for comfort, for guidance, and he realized he couldn't afford to waver. Stay focused. He yelled, trying to keep the energy alive. Remember the light, we have to hold on to it. But as he spoke, a deep rumble surged from the abyss, and a bright flash illuminated the darkness for just a moment. It flickered like a dying star, revealing twisted faces, ghostly reflections of those swallowed by fear and despair. Look! Someone shouted, eyes wide with horror. A ripple of terror swept through the crowd, the memory of the man lost in the void fresh as a wound left to bleed. No! Mark cried out, feeling a pressure build in his chest. That's not what we are. We're not just victims yet. The cloaked figure's steely voice sliced through the air. Speak your words, Mark, but deep down, you know they are empty. You cannot protect them from the truth, they're already entwined with darkness. He stepped back, a shiver crawling along his spine. It was true, he felt that gnawing fear in his own heart, shadowed by doubt. How could he expect others to stand tall when he wavered? For a brief heartbeat, he felt all hope teetering on the brink of despair, as if the fragile foundation they were building could crumble at any moment, but then, something flickered in the eyes of the woman and her child. She stood tall, a pillar of strength amid chaos. We won't let it take us. She shouted, clutching her child. We fight back. That voice seemed to pulse like a beacon, igniting something deep within Mark. Yes. We can. The heaviness lessened as he saw others rallying around her, emboldened by her unwavering resolve. Together. He urged, raising his arms high. We can push back against the darkness. Our light is stronger than this. The crowd, frightened but invigorated, began to chant, the sound building like rolling thunder. We are not lost. We are not afraid. The cloaked figure recoiled, eyes widening in disbelief. Fools! It bellowed, its voice cracking. You know not the power you toy with. The ground shook again, ferocious tremors trembling through the air as if the earth itself protested against their light. Mark clenched his fists, determination bristling through his veins. Don't let it frighten you, he shouted back defiantly. This is our moment. The truth may tear us apart, but we need to face it head-on. Lean into the brightness, you'll find you're not alone. And then, without warning, the light began to pulse. It rippled through the crowd, a chain reaction igniting hope and strength. Mark felt it surge through him, filling the cracks of doubt that had threatened to swallow him whole. But just as they began to forge their glow against the swirling darkness, shadowy tendrils shot out, grasping desperately for those who stood at the periphery, the most afraid. A woman screamed, her friend caught in the snare of madness. No! Mark shouted, lunging forward. Hold tight. Keep the light. We can save them. We can save us all. With each anguished scream, with each desperate plea, darkness twisted, thrashing as if trying to hold on to its last breath. They were chipping away at its hold, but as Mark fought, the cloaked figure's laughter resonated from behind. You think you can pry the truth from the darkness? Remember, once you step into the light, you might not like what it reveals. The light flickered again, more intensely this time, illuminating a vision, shattering their perception of reality, unveiling their deepest fears laid bare before them. What awaited them on the other side of transparency would confront them with their most harrowing truths. Mark felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine as uncertainty clawed at him once more. The truth was beckoning. Would they be ready to face it when the last veil lifted? As they fought against the shadows, it felt like the very fate of humanity rested on the words that hung heavy in the air. What revelation, buried in that shifting fabric of shadow and light, would prove to be the true test of their resilience? Mark's heart felt as if it might burst from his chest, each thump drowned by the depth of darkness clawing at their sanity. He could see only fear etched in the faces surrounding him, but the flicker of defiance in the woman's eyes had ignited something deep within him. They were more than just shadows cast by despair, they were potential, lighting up the gloom with every last ounce of strength they had. Stay together! He yelled, his voice rising above the chaos, each syllable laced with urgency. We need each other now more than ever. The chanting grew louder, their voices converging, blending into a fabric of resistance against the pull of the void. We are not lost. We are not afraid. They weren't just words anymore, they were a pulse, a heartbeat that resonated with their collective will to push back, yet the cloaked figure stood unmoved, arms crossed, a sneer carved into its shadowy visage. You cling to this fragile light, but darkness is the truth, it hissed, twisting its fingers as more tendrils curled around its form, eager to snatch a flicker of hope. Suddenly, a high-pitched wail pierced the air. A young boy, separated in the swell of the crowd, trembled under the weight of the shadows. Mark's heart dropped. The fear radiating from those dark fingers was palpable, like ice creeping down his spine. Help him! His urgency spilled forth as he pushed through the thrumming bodies. We can't leave anyone behind. A few brave souls followed him, charging toward the boy whose wide eyes glistened with raw terror, trapped in the thrall of shadow. They formed a barricade, shining their lights like shields against the encroaching doom, but the shadows advanced, thrashing violently, gnashing with anger. Hold the line! Mark roared, rallying the crowd behind him. Push back! Find your strength! And just like that, the crowd ignited into a frenzy, rallying as one. The light blazed brighter, feeding off the collective courage swelling between them. Together, they pressed against the darkness, and Mark could feel a current of hope surge through him, but with that surge of energy came the realization the shadows were no longer retreating. They were adapting, shifting, forming into grotesque figures that mocked their fight. Faces they recognized, friends lost, hearts shattered sprang from the darkness, swirling into memories of betrayal, doubt, and despair. Face them! Mark shouted, guilt crawling back into his mind like the shadows they fought. These are our fears, but they do not define us. As the figures twisted and writhed, he could feel the heart of the crowd quiver. Eyes darted from side to side, uncertainty flickering. What if we aren't strong enough? Someone whispered, breaking away momentarily. Together. The word burst from Mark like a shot fired in the quiet, intense chaos. Together, we face the truth. Together, we're unstoppable. With each scream from the shadows, each tortured face from the beyond, the light seemed to pulse even more fiercely. Mark's vision narrowed to the boy, who clung desperately to the last remnants of hope. The boy's pleading eyes met his. "Don't let the darkness win," he implored, voice trembling, echoing through the hollow chaos, and then, in the heartbeat of that moment, the shadows surged forward suddenly unearthly and fierce. Mark felt their grip tighten around his chest, squeezing out the last breath of his courage, the laughter of the cloaked figure ringing clear like a death knell. Despite the overwhelming sense of dread, something shifted within the depths of that darkness, something ancient stirred. The truth loomed ahead, insatiable and unrelenting. "Do you truly wish to see?" The cloaked figure rasped, voice like broken glass. "Prepare yourself, it's worse than you can imagine." As the light quavered, confusion coursing through him, Mark knew they were on the cusp of revelation. The line between light and dark was blurring fast. What awaited them could shatter the very foundation of who they were. Would they find strength in their fears, or would the truth render them powerless in its wake? The question hung heavy as the darkness loomed, thickening the air, waiting for just the right moment to swallow them whole. The cloaked figure displayed an unsettling glee, an almost childlike excitement as it watched the crowd's morale teeter on the brink. "Consider this an invitation," it purred, words dripping with malice. The shadows roared louder, twisting and undulating as if in sync with the figure's madness, forming a nightmarish tapestry of torment. "Push back!" Mark shouted, his heart racing with fear and determination. The crowd surged, their light pulses flickering defiantly against the encroaching dark. He locked eyes with the boy again. "Hold on. We're coming." But the shadows pressed relentlessly closer, now a sea of distorted faces, each one a fragment of despair. A woman, lost and hollowed, screamed in torment. A man, his eyes hollow, reached out with fingers that twisted in a grasp for life. They were all memories, a museum of fears reopened, each frame more grotesque than the last. "They know your weakness, your regrets, your failures." The cloaked figure's voice slithered through the air, permeating the gathering panic. "Will you honor their haunted cries, or will you let them drown?" "No!" Mark screamed, tempted to cover his ears, the pressure of the moment almost blinding him. "Your lies! They're not here. They're with us, and they're waiting for us to fight." Instantly, he could see more fighting spirit ignite amongst the crowd, the light brightening as they channeled every ounce of fear, joy, and pain into their defiance. Moments sprang forth from their collective memories, a forgotten laugh, a loving embrace, things that had been overshadowed by their struggles. Around them, the darkness began to ripple, colliding against their light, and in that clash, Mark noticed something, a shimmer, a fault line in the shadows where the light touched. "Focus! Focus on that!" he barked, urgency spilling forth. "The light will push through. We're stronger than this." Around him, people turned, eyes brightening, fingers trembling in hopeful unity, their energies combining into a brilliant wave. Mark could almost taste the anticipation crackling through the air, then the ground shook. A massive formless shadow shot forward, trying to engulf them whole. Mark felt a sharp twist of terror but dug deep, that flicker of defiance roaring inside him gave him strength. "Together!" he cried. With a ferocity that was unexpected, they met the darkness head-on, merging their lights into a single beam. For a breathless second, it seemed to hold back the tide, the screeches of tortured souls echoed like a choir of agony, blending into the chorus of their resistance. But the darkness twitched, responding to their defiance with a fury that was palpable. "Submit!" it thundered, grasping at the edges of their brilliant light, pulling back with a ferocity that made the ground quake beneath them. The crowd faltered for just a heartbeat, a doubt lurching through them like a cold wave. Could they withstand this relentless dread? How long could their light last? "Do not give in!" Mark shouted, panic in his chest, his voice threading through the chaos. "We can break this. Look at the boy. Look at each other. We fight for our hearts." With renewed conviction, they pushed forward, breaking through the veil of shadows. But just as victory appeared within reach, the cloaked figure stepped closer, eyes glinting like faded stars. "You wish to see?" It raised its hand, the shadows swirling rapidly around them in a frenzied storm. "What are you hiding?" Mark demanded, but the cloaked figure only laughed, a sound that chilled him to the bone. Everything as the shadows swirled tighter, Mark braced for what lay ahead, feeling the cold tendrils creep ever closer. They were on the precipice of understanding, but at what cost? What truth could shatter their spirit? The darkness thickened around them, and as one final surge washed over the crowd, dimming the light back to near nothingness, a chilling whisper slithered through the air, "Prepare yourself, for the truths that will haunt you." What awaited them in this engulfing void? Would facing this truth empower them or silence their fight forever? As the echoes of the cloaked figure's words rippled through the crowd, the earth beneath them heaved again, the ground splitting open wider, dark tendrils reaching out like desperate fingers grasping for salvation. The pressure of uncertainty surged, a tidal wave of fear crashing against their collective resolve. Hearts pounded like war drums, breaths were shallow, and in that moment, Mark could feel the weight of all their hopes balanced precariously on a knife's edge. "Together, we push forward," Mark urged, the fire in his voice battling against the frost of despair that threatened to seep into their bones. He locked eyes with the woman and her child once more, urging her to hold fast, to remember that they were not alone. They had battled the shadows of their pasts and had emerged victorious, but now the final test loomed before them, one that would strip bare their fears, their regrets, and the raw truth of what it meant to be human. The cloaked figure raised its hands, summoning darkness swirling with potent energy. "Those who fear the truth will succumb," it hissed, and Mark felt a shiver trail down his spine, realizing its words hung with ominous weight. Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward like a ravenous beast, consuming everything in their path. When they clashed with the light they had forged, a blinding explosion erupted, a luminous burst that drowned out the dark, leaving the crowd momentarily stunned, their eyes wide as the shock of brightness enveloped them. "Now! Claim your truth!" Mark bellowed, channeling every ounce of raw energy into their collective consciousness. That was it, this was their chance. The very air shimmered, crackling with anticipation, and as they pushed together, each shining heart lending its strength to the collective, they began seeing glimpses through the murky shrouds of uncertainty. Visions poured forth, a tapestry of memories unraveled. Faces of loved ones lost, laughter mingled with tears, hopes intertwined with whispers of dreams unfulfilled. They felt the weight of abandonment, the burden of their failures, and fueling it all was an ancient longing not just for survival but for connection, understanding, and above all, redemption. "Light!" Mark shouted, energizing their fragile unity. "Illuminate the shadows that haunt you. Your truth is your power." A roar of defiance surged from the crowd, rising in crescendo. "We are not afraid," they cried out, united in defiance. The edge of darkness clawed back, retreating under the might of their collective strength. The sickly green light faded, revealing glimmers of dawn filtering through a sea of shadows. But the cloaked figure bared its teeth, a twisted grin spreading across its shadowed features. "Your cries are meaningless," it screeched, lashing out in fury, sending shockwaves splintering through the ground. Yet for each tremor, the crowd's resolve only grew stronger. "Stay true," Mark shouted, feeling the thrum of energy ripple through his body, a living heartbeat in sync with their collective light. "This darkness cannot claim us. We stand for each other." One by one, they embraced their memories, leaned into their vulnerabilities, and channeled them into a radiant force. The fabric of reality seemed to quiver at their command, splintering away the lies that bound them in chains of fear. The cloaked figure's voice turned frantic, "You cannot escape the darkness within. You cannot win." But as the final tendrils of shadow ripped away, the crowd roared one final time, unleashing their truth, their strength, and the blinding light consumed everything, washing over the cloaked figure, swallowing it, howling in fury as it blinked out of existence. Mark stood amidst the brilliance, gasping, breathing life into a world reborn. As the shadows dissolved like mist under the sun, healing rays filled the empty spaces where fears had lingered. It was still. The chaos faded, transforming into a serene silence wrapped around them like a gentle hug. The universe felt lighter, vibrating with the restless energy of awakening, a shift that would resonate through humanity from that moment forward. And around him, faces of friends old and new emerged through the haze, expressions flushed with relief and gratitude, lighting up with renewed hope. The woman with her child smiled through glistening tears. "We did it." Together Mark could only nod, overwhelmed with suffocating joy, the weight of doubt slowly lifting. "We held on to the light," he breathed, and as the sun began to rise, painting the world with warm colors, he knew that humanity had embraced its profound truth at last. Love would prevail over fear, and together they would pave the way forward. "Let us begin anew," someone whispered, and they all took a collective breath, ready to step into the light, reborn from the shadows. This was the moment they would carry in their hearts, a testament to what they had conquered together. And as they turned to face the dawn of a new day, Mark's heart swelled, knowing this fight had not just been theirs alone but for every soul still lost in the darkness, a promise that the light would always return. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What does it mean for our heroes? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who are dying to learn how this epic saga unfolds.